What's good everyone? I'm back with my first Smash video in 4 years. Today we're ranking the Smash Ultimate cast by the amount of aura they give off. Aura can manifest in many different ways, but for this video, I narrowed it down to 2 factors: how they act as a character in their games, and how intimidating they are to play against in Smash. This is mostly subjective, to be honest, so let's have fun with it. So first we have the negative aura tier. Having aura basically means being cool, and these 11 fighters are either the opposite of cool, or they don't even really have a character in the first place. For starters, it's impossible for me to take Bowser Jr. and Diddy Kong seriously. They only appear as sidekicks to a better villain. You expect me to watch Bowser Jr. drive around in his clown car and take that seriously? Absolutely not. And Diddy Kong shares this same energy, when his whole playstyle revolves around getting his opponent to trip on a banana peel, Duck Hunt, and Banjo-Kazooie. I will acknowledge that Banjo and Kazooie seem a little bit cooler in their games, but I've never once felt a positive or engaging emotion when I've been fighting against them in Smash. They both heavily rely on projectiles, which I generally deem to have less aura than close combat fighters. Although there's a couple exceptions to that we'll find out about later. With Olimar, it's really just the height. He's 1.9 centimeters tall. You or me could both squash him like an ant. Game & Watch and Rob have some of the lamest playstyles you could imagine, with one abusing the low amount of end lag on his moves, and the other fishing for cheesy kills with the side B. They're not really legitimate characters either. Rob is a literal plastic toy, and if I ever saw one in real life, I could just pick it up and chuck it across the room. Wii Fit Trainer's a little bit more fun to play as and play against, but she has the same problem of not really being a character with a personality.
Just like that. Try to stay still while you continue breathing.
Same thing with the Mii fighters, they're designed to be just a generic hodgepodge of all the other characters' moves. Although if you equip the Sans costume, it might be a different story. Next we have the no aura tier. They're not as offensive as characters with negative aura, but they don't bring a lot to the table either. I put most of Fire Emblem here, but it's actually for different reasons. Basing it on the games, Chrom and Ike might rank somewhat highly, but unfortunately, they have the easiest recovery to exploit in the game, and this removes any fear factor from playing against them the second I throw them off stage. With Lucina, I find her less exciting than someone like Marth because her moves deal the same damage no matter where you hit them, whereas Marth is ranked higher because landing a tipper gives you a dopamine hit, and strikes more fear in the opponent. You could argue for the latter 3 having more unique movesets, which is somewhat true, but at the same time, I think the quantity of Fire Emblem characters takes away a little bit from the quality of their aura. Yoshi and Piranha Plant are really just side characters in Mario. I mean, technically Yoshi gets his own games, but being honest, did anyone really play these? But to make up for Piranha Plant not having a significant role in its game, it's such a joke character.
Hold up. Seriously?
That it becomes humiliating to lose to it, so that brings some fear factor to the table. I simply don't find anything special about Ivysaur, Squirtle, or Jigglypuff. Hitting a rest with Jigglypuff is pretty hype.
Oh my god!
But in low to mid level play, this usually results in the Jigglypuff player embarrassing themselves and taking a fully charged smash attack. Pac-Man definitely has the iconic factor going for him, and while he does rely somewhat on projectiles, you can get extremely creative in how you deploy these. In fact, I'm actually going to move him up to the next tier while I'm recording this, because I realized that he might deserve a little more. Now, Pit might be a controversial one, because he displays a lot more character and enthusiasm than anyone we've talked about so far.
I am Pit, servant of the goddess of light, and you are mystery!
What was that all about?
I think it's difficult for him to have his own aura when he's always getting ordered around by Palutena, and he has more of a bread and butter type of playstyle, instead of being someone who really threatens you. There are 2 sides to Little Mac. He has a lot of aura when he's on the ground, and can completely ignore your attack while he punches you. On the other hand, just throw him off stage and he becomes the weakest character in the game. So that balances out to him having no aura. Villager and Isabelle are in Smash more so because Animal Crossing is popular, and less so because of the actual characters. We don't really see them at all in high level play, so besides the occasional axe or explosion, there's not much really to see here. I don't know what happened to Inkling, but nobody plays this character anymore. Her moveset is actually kind of cool, but if you're not getting used by anyone, I can't really say the character has aura. Min Min definitely has one of the lamest playstyles, but at least she has enough character to be significant in ARMS. Enough so that she beat out the guy with the blue hair for a spot on the Smash roster. Finally, we can start talking about some characters that have legitimate aura, and one of the ways this can manifest is with Hero and Sora. I'm talking about main character energy. Hero is extremely fun to play as and against, especially with the randomness factor. That keeps both players on their toes in Smash. I'm not the biggest fan of how Sora's playstyle was implemented, but there's no doubt that he's an iconic protagonist with rich character depth. I'm gonna group these next three together and call them the edgy group. They're foils to the main character in their games. I'd say Meta Knight has an edge in that department, but his non-special moves are generally really weak. Dark Pit ended up being higher than Pit because he seems more independent in Kid Icarus Uprising, and certainly seems more menacing. If I have this right, Dark Samus is more of a parasite than a legitimate being, but someone who can go toe-to-toe with Samus has to have at least some aura. Wario's a less serious villain than Bowser, but he has quite a bit of uniqueness in his moveset. Bowser routinely gets embarrassed by Mario, and in Smash, he has to rely on tricks like up B out of shield and abusing pivot grab. I mean, a lot of characters have up B out of shield, but it does not seem characteristic of one of these heavy villain types. He does hit hard though, I'll give him that. Ice climbers don't seem too threatening until you get grabbed and then suddenly you're dead. That gives you plenty to worry about when you're playing against them in Smash, even if they don't have a ton of character in their games. Greninja and Pikachu are both just pretty cool Pokemon. Pikachu's definitely more iconic, but also plays a little bit lamer in the game by abusing its short height. I grouped three of the characters together that came from fighting games. They're pretty scary to play against, because it's not easy for them to get in, but when they do, they can cancel their moves into each other and deal a ton of damage. You know, a lot of characters ended up in this middle tier because they're cool in their games, but very not cool in Smash. And Ness and Lucas are the prime example of this. They have fought gods and gone through extreme circumstances in Earthbound and Mother, but every time I hear the phrase they continuously lose aura points in my mind. Mega Man, Steve, and Sonic kind of have this same problem. Even though they're quite powerful and strong in their games, they tend to have campy playstyles in Smash. With Mythra and Sheik, it's a little different though. The reason they're not in a higher tier is because most of their moves are fast and weak. That generally means less aura in Smash than a character who deals heavy damage with each attack. They are well integrated into their games though. Finally, Young Link and Toon Link have less aura than grown-up adult man Link. And that's mostly just common sense based on being faster and weaker compared to adult Link. And also, I think they generally deal with less serious circumstances in their games than Breath of the Wild Link did, for example. Though I could be wrong, let me know. Now we've got significant aura, but actually they all have their own unique reasons for being here. It seems like Nintendo's been making an effort to make Peach and Daisy less of a damsel in distress type and more independent as characters. The float mechanic also makes them very stylish in Smash. So we're starting to get characters that check both of these boxes. Rosalina and Palutena are both extremely powerful figures in their games. Not enough to control their entire universe, because then there would be no conflict, but just a couple notches below that. And their Smash movesets are good enough to complement this. I ended up putting Pyra above Mythra, mainly because she's the one responsible for dealing heavy damage with one attack. So this makes her more intimidating, knowing that you can die to half of her moveset, instead of getting 1,000 paper cuts from Mythra. Zelda has a fun moveset that revolves around setting up her strong aerials. And I always find it funny how Link is doing all this hard work in his games just for Zelda to show up at the end and be the one to seal Ganon away. I will give Link some credit though for being the one to handle the grunt work in his games. And unlike Young Link and Toon Link, it really means something when he hits you with his sword. Simon and Richter Belmont got away with one here, since they are notoriously campy in Smash. But Castlevania is just too cool for me to put them any lower. And we finally reached the other two Fire Emblem characters, Marth and Roy. I think they're a lot more fun than the other Fire Emblem characters when it comes to hitting these sweet spots on their moves. They're also the OGs, you know? They've been in Smash since Melee. Incineroar doesn't stand out to me as much as a character, but he has a very interesting design. He has really good moves to counteract his slow speed, and his grappling archetype makes him more interesting than a lot of the other heavies. Mewtwo earns the right to be here simply because he's one of the most powerful Pokemon. Of course, he has to be brought down to everyone else's level in Smash, but having significant cannon power is something I take note of. Kazuya ended up being a tier above the other fighting game characters. It's true that he's intimidating, but you could argue that it's for the wrong reason. 0 to death combos are just a bit much in my my opinion. It's mainly his character design that puts him in a higher tier. Ganondorf is a relatively serious villain, and certainly brings that fear factor with him in Smash. However, it's really difficult for him to find an opening and recover back onto the stage. So if he's a bottom tier character in Smash, that keeps him outside of top tier aura. It's mostly the same story with King K. Rool and Ridley. Serious villains, but not that serious to play against in Smash. I was on the fence about putting Falco a tier below Fox and Wolf, but in the end I thought it was simpler to group them all together. They all have similar amount of style in their movesets, and their games, well, no one really plays their games anymore. But I don't know, they have guns, I guess? I almost forgot to talk about Pichu. He's less relevant in the Pokemon universe than Pikachu, but he's an extreme glass cannon in Smash, and this puts the pressure on both players to be making the most of their opportunities. If somebody's using Pichu, it increases the pace of the game overall, which I think deserves significant aura. Finally, the best of the best. All three of the Mario brothers have maximum aura. The best example to draw this from is the Mario and Luigi series, and I know we're all looking forward to brothership. Meanwhile in Smash, they have some of the highest damage capacity out of anyone on the roster. You could instantly go from 0 to 50 when one of them lands a hit, or even 0 to death. Dr. Mario doesn't have as much going for him in the games, but if you ask me, his Smash moveset is even more stylish than Mario's. And then we have Kirby. He's by no means a top tier character, but if he wanted to, he could just devour the entire universe. He's only low tier in Smash because he's not really trying, so I have that in the back of my mind when I'm playing against him. Shulk is the OG from Xenoblade. It's one of the most story-rich series that Nintendo has to offer, and that does a lot of favors for his aura. He completely controls the pace of the game in Smash using his Minato arts. Joker is extremely stylish in Persona, and he's one of the few characters that can be both fast and heavy hitting. Of course, Arsene is what really brings his aura to the table in Smash. I'm going to group these next 5 or 6 together. They have this morally gray bounty hunter type of thing going for them, despite all of them being from extremely different games. This is less so demonstrated in F-Zero, but we all know how stylish Captain Falcon is in Smash. The rest of them rely more on their games than their Smash playstyles. But Cloud being a mercenary, Snake being, I don't know, probably a secret agent, I didn't play Metal Gear Solid, Bayonetta being a powerful witch with guns, and Samus who's managed to build a ton of character without talking as much in her games. They all fall into this mature category of games that have made it into Smash, and that gives them an advantage in aura compared to more family-friendly games. I think we all know why Lucario's here. He's the literal embodiment of aura. It's baked into his moveset, and overall, just having a fighting-type Pokemon was a genius idea in Smash. He fully deserves a spot here. Charizard has more of the iconic factor going for him, being a Gen 1 starter Pokemon, and he certainly brings the heat as a heavy character in Smash, especially with moves like Flare Blitz. There's something special about the auras of Donkey Kong and King Dedede compared to the other heavy villain types. Despite being quite powerful in their games, they're generally seen as less serious. But in my opinion, that's better than villains who try to be serious and fail. They bring all the style you could ask for in Smash. I mean, just look at his crouch. If you're getting beat up by a King Dedede player, and they do this to you, it's over. Sephiroth fully deserves the last spot in this tier, especially with how well he's able to manipulate Cloud in Final Fantasy VII. He has the longest sword in the game and it's not even close. When you combine this with his powerful projectiles, and a counter that doesn't even care if you hit him, he's really unique in both his games and his Smash moveset. I hope you enjoyed the video. I do a lot of content that's like informative or challenges, but I figured I'd try something different and go purely for entertainment. It'll be interesting to see how this one goes, so let me know if you like it, and I'll see you guys next time.